namaste. Hope you're fine. As you know, always try to connect you with the people who are doing great and inspiring the world. Today we have Dr. Jeff Burns. He's a peacemaker, life coach, and also the former minister. And today we will try to learn something from him. Assalamu alaikum. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Walaikum salam.
That's great. That's really amazing. So that's really amazing as you're working for the for building peace for many years, and that's really great. But I just want to know that how what actually inspire you to making the peace. What actually how that story started? What happens? What's behind? What actually happens behind?
Yes, that's a good question. I became a peacemaker in 2005, and it was by accident. I had been a Christian minister for 18 years, and I resigned in 2004, and I was disillusioned because of a lot of the things I had seen in in the American church. And one day I would received an email that there was going to be a 3 month class on Islam at a local church that was trying to respond to 9/11. And they wrote me and said, "We want you to come because you've been a very influential pastor in the area." I did not want to go. And I said, I know all I need to know about Islam. I don't need to learn anything else. They're all terrorists. After 9/11, I assumed they all were terrorists and wanted nothing to do with them. And so I thought, I know everything about Islam there is to know. So they're terrorists, even the ones that are nice. They want to take over America. That was my view. And so my wife said, "Well, I think you should take that class because as a pastor, you fought racism in the South." I pastored one church that half my leadership at one time had been in the Ku Klux Klan. Are you familiar with the Ku Klux Klan? And it's a group that was formed to persecute black people. And I found, and they started getting angry at me because we had the Native Americans coming, African Americans coming, and they threatened me. And my wife, and I stood up to them. My wife said, "You stood up for people of color, but when it comes to Muslims, you're a racist in your heart." And so I was so offended, and it took me a little while, but I finally decided to take that class. Well, we had imams speaking, we had others, and we had to read all this reading. And halfway through the class, I said, "Well, no harm done." I realized that Islam is not a monolithic religion. You know what I mean? By just, it's not, all Muslims aren't the same. You got Sufi, you got Shia, you got Sunni, then you got Sufi and Sunni, Sufi and Shia, then you got schools of thought. It's very diverse. You got progressive, you got traditionalist. And I thought, whoa, okay, this is a lot like us as Christians. People say a Christian from the West, they have an image, but we're very different. All of us are very different also, and have different views even in the same churches. And so I said, no harm done. I've learned a lot. And so this is as far as it goes. Well, they said in order to get credit for this class, you have to go make friends with a Muslim and you have to go to the mosque for one of their dawah presentations. I did not want to do that. I would have rather had surgery than go do that. That was outside my comfort zone. And one thing I've learned about God, the life we want to live is outside our comfort zone. It is. It's outside our zone. We have to step through that membrane to grow. And I thought, well, I've put all this time into this class, so I want to get credit for my class, and get that certificate. So one day I was sitting in a Starbucks on Creedmoor Road, and I was struggling so hard over this issue about making friends with Muslims. And I was losing sleep over it. My stomach was in knots. So I'm sitting in Starbucks reading the class manual, and I had highlighters, magic markers. I like to underline with magic markers and take notes in books. And I was stressed out, and I saw the hijab on all the pictures, and now to me, the hijab is a beautiful thing. Now that I understand, and then I saw the men with the skull caps and the beards, and I was like, God, surely you're not calling me to do something. You're not calling me to build a bridge between Christians and Muslims in this country. And now I've done it all over the world. And so I bowed my head and I said something like this: God, here's the deal. If you want me to build a bridge between Muslims and Christians in America, you're going to have to give me a sign so clear I will never, ever doubt it. Well, I felt better because coming from a Baptist background, we do not believe in signs. We thought that was long ago, So I thought I was off the hook, that I had checkmated God in a chess game. And so as I was sitting there, I was feeling smug and I'm off the hook now. And children would always come over and ask to borrow my magic markers. They would come over. And I never thought anything about it. And then as soon as I prayed that prayer, maybe a minute later, this little boy came over to my table and he kept staring at me. And he said, "Sir, I would like to borrow one of your magic markers or highlighters." I said, "Sure, take the blue one." He said, "No, sir, I prefer the orange one." So I said, "Take the orange one." Now, God knew the weight of my heart would be through a child. Because every ministry I've had, every church I've led, I've put all the money into children and youth. I say, people, let's just give, make them the priority, So he knew a child would conquer me, and not a debate, not an argument. So this little boy takes an orange highlighter that I'd given him, and I thought he would walk away, but he comes around. Starbucks has round tables, like real round tables. He comes around, pulls up a chair. He's so little. Gets on his knees in the chair and puts his elbows on the table like this. And he held up that magic marker and he took the lid off and he said, "Sir, by the way, my name is Omar and I am 5 years old and I'm here to teach you some Arabic." Now, remember, I had just prayed for a sign. So I thought I was going to pass out. My knees got weak. I thought, what's happening? He rips out a piece of paper and starts writing the Arabic alphabet as loud as he can. Just saying it. And I'm like, what's happening here? And it was almost as if Allah, Spirit, whispered in my ear and said, "You did not think I could do that, did you?" So Omar writes it out. And before I can even think what was happening, I hear this woman yelling and she goes, "Omar, what are you doing? Leave that poor man alone." And I said, "No, ma'am, Omar is just fine." Now, God had given me a sign. And I thought, well, I don't want to end up in the belly of the whale like Eunice. I don't want to have a plague. I want to listen. I better listen to God. He's got my attention now. He's given me my sign. So Omar started writing out the alphabet. Now he's 5 years old. And he said, "Now I want you to write it out." He's not a calligrapher. At 5 years old, you're not a calligrapher, So I wrote, I looked at his and I wrote it out. And I thought it looked just like his. And he said, "Sir, it is all wrong. I'm going to have to come around the table and lead you by the hand through the Arabic alphabet." And Omar did that. He said, "Say the letter with me, say the letter with me," went through it. And by the time we got through that alphabet, I no longer hated Muslims. It was gone. It was as if God took all the hate and resentment and fear out of me. A little child conquered me. So I went over to his mother and I said, "Omar is going to be a great teacher one day." And she said, "We're shocked. We're shocked." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Omar is an extremely shy child. He would never go up to a stranger or a non-family member. And we've been trying to figure out what made Omar get up and walk over to your table." Well, I knew it was God, but I wasn't quite ready to have that conversation. But I walked out of that Starbucks that day and I looked up into the sky and I said, "God, I'm in. From this day forward, I will be a peacemaker. You just got to show me how to do it. I don't know how to do it." So I started going to the mosque and making friends. I'd go down to Friday prayer and sit in the back, and then we would have lunch together. And I started taking Christian leaders to go meet the imams. And next thing you know, we're having conversations like, what is jihad? What does that really mean? And they begin to understand that most Muslims aren't in alignment with what ISIS and other groups define as jihad. They begin to realize that most Muslim women do not feel oppressed by wearing the hijab. And so that's where it started. And we formed communities of peace. We did projects together. And I've done this in several places. But it all started with a little child. And that was my sign. God knew that argument would not work. He had to go for my heart. And so I had to be very patient with people who were like me. Sometimes I'll meet someone who's as prejudiced, and I have to remind myself, I thought like that man or that woman once did. So I have to, a lot of times when they hear the story of Omar, they change, But that's how I got started.
That's really amazing, and that's pretty amazing. So, as you know, both it's difficult to accept these things, and it's from both sides. Like it's from also from Christians also. But today we also want to know what actually peace is. What is the message of peace? Because there, mostly people think that it's like it's accepting others. They would say accept others. What with all the differences? Like we all have different we all have different realities, we all have different beliefs, but we accept each other beliefs. That is so that's your belief, that's my belief. So this doesn't mean that uh, I have to kill someone to just prove that that he has to agree with my belief. So I just want, there many people thinks that and they believe that if we accept others, if we accept others realities, it just mean we are doing wrong. It just mean that we are accepting the wrong things. Like as you mentioned that some before starting believe on that piece, you were thinking that about Muslims, that they are terrorists, all that kind of things. So I want to know that what the message of peace is actually, and is it like denying your own reality or not? It's just like accept each other and live with
Mhm.
love.
Yes, that's a very good question. Um, I think the message of peace, um, Isa al-Masih, we call him Jesus. The Quran says to obey several times, to obey Jesus. And so I thought, what does that mean? Jesus, there's a section in the Injil called the Sermon on the Mount, and it's the core teachings of Jesus on how we should interact. And you can find those core teachings affirmed in the Quran. I mean, these are not, I mean, these are very clear. But I sum it up, and the kind of the central message of the kingdom of God, or the straight path, or that Jesus and the prophets intended us to follow, is to love God with all your being. That's the first thing. Love your neighbor as yourself. You can't love your neighbor until you love yourself. That's where we mess up. If we're at war in here, we're going to be at war with others. And then treat other people the way you want to be treated. Whether if I have a Sikh neighbor or a Hindu neighbor and our Muslim neighbor, I I need to treat them the way I would want to be treated. And then if you find enemies along the way, people that are hostile towards you, do everything within your power to make them your friends. That's what Gandhi did, Mandela. That's what Martin Luther King did. And Gandhi and King were very inspired by the Sermon on the Mount. They say that. And so those guys really believed that we have to make peace with our enemies, do everything we can. Even Prophet Muhammad said this. This is not a wild idea. It's all there. What the problem is, I think the problem is, like in America, right now, we're in a very difficult time. And so a lot of churches that claim to follow Jesus, not all of them, there's many wonderful churches, get uncomfortable with talking about peace. We are so used to war right now. We're afraid. We are a culture that's very afraid right now, afraid of each other. We're divided. And I try to walk in that bridge, to identify as a human and try to build bridges even there. And we're seeing some good work there. But I think that's the message of peace: to love God, love your neighbors yourself, treat other people the way you want to be treated. And if you find enemies along the way, to make them your friends. Now, there's a difference between peacemaking and peacekeeping. There's a big difference. Peacekeeping is bringing in troops or money or whatever it is to try to keep people from killing each other. Now, that works as long as the soldiers are there. But the problem is you're not dealing with the heart of the people at conflict. So the moment you remove the soldiers or the incentive, they go right back. They've not changed. They've not learned to be neighbors. They've not learned to respect each other or treat it. They think that they got to annihilate. We see this all over the world. Once the troops are pulled out, or the UN or whatever, things don't do. Sometimes they go back, but they don't always. And so peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is it starts in here in our hearts. We have to be at peace with ourselves, because the conflict's going to go out. We're going to judge people. It's just going to be, want to put people in a box or category, and that makes us more comfortable with our tribe or whatever group we're in. But the idea of peace, you have to look in and it's the same concept of salam, but you have to look at Jesus was Jewish, and so he was influenced by the Torah and the Injil, and In the Torah, the idea is the peace is shalom. You've heard that term shalom? And shalom is like salam. It means peace on steroids. I mean, the holistic peace. And so in the Hebrew scriptures, it's broken down into 5 things. The first one is peace with God. It's multidimensional peace. So to have true peace, you have to have peace with God. That means that you are surrendering consciously to God's will, and you're choosing to obey his commands. Well, people say there's a lot of commands. Jesus said the greatest commands are love God and love your neighbor. He said, if you want to put all the commands, if you follow these 2, everything else works. So this is what he was saying. So we want peace with God. We want to submit and obey him. We want peace with ourselves. One of the things that people have the hardest time doing is loving themselves. Even there's some people who will take care of everybody else, but not take care of their own health, not take care of their own needs. And they put their dreams down, and later they can resent, And so the first person, when you're on an airplane and they say, if we lose altitude, the oxygen masks come down, don't put the mask on your children first, put them on you first, because you got to be there to help them. So we have to really, to be at peace with ourselves, we have to put our own oxygen mask on first. That means we have to love ourselves. I don't mean narcissistically, but we have to care for ourselves. Say, you know what? I got to take care of me first. That doesn't mean I don't care, but I can't take care of others if I'm not healthy and if I'm nervous and I'm tense all the time. So we got to figure out what brings us joy, have something to look forward to, have someone to love or something to love, you know what I mean? And to have meaningful work. And so we have to take care of ourselves. And unfortunately, a lot of good people in this world that are doing good things aren't good at taking care of themselves. And what they do is they leave this earth before their time, I think sometimes. And so love God, love yourself, take care of yourself. And I've really had to change in that, because I was always going, and I realized I don't celebrate the victories that I've seen. I don't slow down enough. I need to meditate more and pray more. I need to enjoy something, have a hobby, and things like that, and that replenishes. Then Thich Nhat Hanh, I don't know if you've heard that name, Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk who tried to end the Vietnam War, and he was nominated by Martin Luther King Jr. for the Nobel Peace Prize. Thich Nhat Hanh, people say, Mr. Hanh, don't you understand how bad things are in the world? And how do you stay so peaceful? He goes, what do you want me to do? Be anxious? If I'm anxious, I'm going to get sick. If I get sick, I'm not going to be able to help solve the problems in the world, And so there's God, ourselves, and others, okay? So once we learn to love God and love ourselves, and we learn to love others or our neighbors, right? Then we start seeing things change. And when we say love our neighbor, I mean the community, the common good, people we interact with. If we have a lot of segregation, or we have neighborhoods that we do not want them coming into our neighborhood, or we going into them, we have that. Eventually, that community is going to get sick. It's going to get sick with hate, resentment, racism, or religious intolerance. We've seen that everywhere, So love our neighbor means whoever God brings in your path. And one of the things we're trying to do in America, and we're doing this where there's been prejudice, is getting communities together by one way is getting their children in sports together. Black kids, white kids, Hispanic. And the next thing to know, the kids start liking each other, and all the parents are coming to the ball games, and the parents get used to each other, and then it changes, So it's anything that can bring people together. And that's one thing we did. We started building habitat homes for the poor, doing community gardens. It's hard to hate someone when you're building a house for the poor with them. After a while, it's hard to do that. And so the common good. We all have to. In Prophet Muhammad, peace be to him, in his covenants, said that what's good for the Christian is good for the Muslim, and what's good for the Muslim is good for the Christian. And he laid out very clear rules that they are the opposite of ISIS. They're the opposite of those things, of how we should interact. I mean, he was following this core message of peace. Don't force Christians to convert. If a Christian comes to you and needs help building his church, give him money. All the it was not, don't force them to marry you unless they want to, the women. And he said, treat them with respect and honor, because what's good for them is good for you, and vice versa. That's called synergy, the common good. It's in the common best interest of a Muslim to be at peace with his Muslim neighbor and to make that person's life better. So the goal is, when peace with others, as we love our neighbor, we want our neighbor to have a lifted life. We want them to have a better life. We want to. So once we do that, it creates magic. It really does. And then peace with the environment. That's what shalom means too. We got to look at our world around us and say, you know what? We don't need to take more resources than we need. That's not good for the common collective. And what about our children? We're one. I think it's an African proverb that says we are living on land that belongs to our grandchildren. And if we don't think that way, if we think all the resources now are just one way, then we're in trouble. And then there's peace with the economy. And what that means is everyone should have a fair share to prosper. Now, that's going to be different levels. The government should be just, and we should stand up for the poor and close that gap in inequity, and find a way. And the Bible was very clear on that. The Prophet Muhammad in the Quran are very clear on that. And so our systems often in America are set up to get people in debt. They're set up on a credit system, and it causes a lot of problems. So to me, that's what peace is about. If we're not at peace with ourselves, we're going to believe lies about the other, lies about ourselves. And we believe once we do that, we'll create character defects around those lies to protect ourselves, and that will manifest in conflict.
Amazing, amazing. Exactly. And I think that's really important. So, okay, there are many people don't even realize that why we need peace, and what are the challenges you think that is actually that are around us that comes in the way of peace, and how we can deal with these challenges, how we can, as you mentioned in your message, I think that's really clear what peace is and how we can bring peace. Uh, love with the God, then love yourself, then love with the neighbors, and when you, as you mentioned, then when you think you can bring that. So uh, but it's important to understand that why we need peace and what are the actual challenges and how we can deal with peace.
Yeah, actual challenges to peace. Yes. Well, I know in America, let me back it up. Martin Luther King said the only way to get rid of an enemy is to make them your friend. I believe that. I believe that from my heart. And we should do, and I've seen this work in peace work. I have gone in and talked to people that people in the United States said, you should not be talking to them. That's a warlord, or that's that kind of person, or that person is committed. He's a human. She's a human. And my goal has never been to change their minds, but to get them to like me. And if they like me, we can talk. Then we can pray together, And if they like me, they often will automatically change what they're doing. They'll say, okay, if you'll come back and visit us, we'll let someone build a school. We won't burn villages anymore. Whatever. I mean, it's all about humanity. And I've always believed that most conflicts in the world, if we would humble ourselves, could be solved over tea and over a meal if we sit down and listen. So Stephen Covey said, seek first to understand before being understood. We have to, and it takes work. I had to step outside my comfort zone to become friends with Muslims. It's easy to stay in our bubble, my white bubble, my American bubble. I had to step out of that and listen. And as I begin to listen to their stories, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that happened to you. I didn't know that was and you got kids just like I do. And all that, we begin to laugh. And when people begin, so I tell people to do 4 things: to become friends intentionally, and just keep showing up. And at first, some people may push. So one thing I do, I teach Americans, say, look, you want to have Muslims in your home, but in order to do that, you got to make them comfortable. Your food has to be halal. That's like kosher or clean. So I would teach them what that meant. So when they asked the Muslim, will you come to my home? As the Muslim was hesitant, say, oh, the food's halal, and then just have them over for fun. So eat together, then become friends. And as they eat together and their kids play together, they start letting down. I've had many Muslim friends. I have Muslim friends that are so conservative that my other Muslims say, how did you and that guy become friends? I said, we started having tea together, And then I have some Muslim friends who are liberal, and I have friends all over the map in politically. And I just identify as a child of God. I don't identify as a Republican or a Democrat. I identify as a child of God, and I stand for justice. And so I tell people, become good friends, eat together, and understand what that means. If you're going to make friends with a Hindu, you better understand, are there any issues here of eating together that we need to work out? And as you become friends, you can explore faith together. You can explore it. Like, once you're a friend with someone and they know you're a friend and you're not out to convert them or hurt them, what they say, you can say to them, okay, I had a friend of mine one time, and his name is Cherno, wonderful. We were brothers, Muslim. And I sat down with him. He asked me hard questions. Why do American Christians do this? And I answered them, and I thought, wow, I didn't know y'all thought about that. And I said, well, can you answer me about jihad? And he said, yes. Once I got the concept of that, I understood it was being abused. It wasn't, the real jihad, Prophet Muhammad said, is within. What that means is, I think that means loving yourself and dealing with your character, and dealing with the lies you believe. That's the jihad. You know what I mean? That's the real jihad. And changing, being willing to say, okay, I could be wrong. I got to reach out and understand the other. That's my jihad. It's an emotional and intellectual jihad. That's the real. It's easy to shoot and blow up things, but the real jihad is say, I have a neighbor, it's a Jew. I have I'm work with this person. My jihad is to let go of this and understand them so I can see the world through their eyes. So become good friends, eat together, explore faith together as friends. Not to debate, but if for friends they can debate if they want to, but the understanding that we're going to be different, and then do a service project together in the community. Start looking for ways to help the common good. It may be just go feed the homeless together. It might just be, hey, our neighborhoods are having struggles with, let's go together to city council, whatever it is, because I think Muslims and Christians and others are better together. And I think Shaitan and our other our enemies of the world, their goal is to keep us divided. They don't want us to be friends because they know once that happens, it's hard for these guys and people on whether they're American or whatever to come in and bring conflict. It's very hard after that. So yeah, and I think politics, my thing on politics is good if it focuses on the common good. Now, a lot of our politics do not focus on the common good. They focus on power and their party. And so in America, we're kind of getting tired of just the two-party system. We realize we need more, and because they're keeping us polarized. And I think that they've lost awareness of the common good, our leaders. It's all about their party. And so I think we need to focus on the common good. Say, okay, we are elected by our citizens to make our country better. You need this and I need this. How can we come together to make sure that we represent our communities and not corporations, we're not, that are, so we've got an interesting system here. So yeah, I think that is it. We do it, become friends, eat together, explore faith together, and do something in your community. And it's intentional. It's easy not to make friends with a Muslim. It's easy not to make friends with a Christian when you're surrounded by that. And you'll be criticized by your community at first. But what happens is, after a while, when I started, my friends wanted to get involved. I said, I went to this Muslim's home. Oh my gosh, all the food, and I thought, who's going to eat all this food? And they're like, wow, really? Yeah. How do we get involved? People start having fun. And, and so I really do believe it's making friends. Yeah.
Exactly. And exactly, that's just like that. In childhood, we also have in the back door, there are also Christians with friends. And since our childhood, we brought up with them. And when we were kid and we shift here, and our cousins usually laughed at us that you have that friends because we share at Christmas, then Eid, all these
Yes.
things we share with them, friend gifts first. And but I think that's the amazing thing you ever did, and that's really amazing. So at the end, I also want to know some tips and tricks for the young people, for me, like who graduated and who are stepping in their practical life. So anything you want to share
Yes.
from your experience to us,
I
that
think the
we
young
can take
generation
forward.
now in both Muslim and Christian communities is wanting higher values than they've seen. They're tired of religion and politics being about the negative. They're really wanting to live shalom. They're really wanting to live. They're concerned about the environment. They're concerned about economics, and that's why I love Brother Rehan. And I tell young people from other countries, and I'm a part of Rehan's movement now. I'm becoming an interviewer. I've been interviewed, scores of times, but I said, Rehan, I want to get involved in this. This is changing the world. So I'll be doing my first interview on Monday. So say a prayer for me. But I think one thing that's very strategic, I'm encouraging right now young people to become part of the Rehan's movement. And I have met young people in refugee camps that are wanting to interview me. And so they're being inspired by Rehan. Do you see what I'm saying? They know Rehan basically said, here's the books you need to read. Here's what, expanding consciousness. So young people, I think it's very important for young people to be around people that are different from them, to learn from them and have dialogue. And and I think Rehan's movement, join that and follow those steps, will change you forever. So I highly encourage that. The other thing is we have to find ways to do good together. Young people are really into action. And if the mosque won't do it or the church won't do it, young people just get together and say, "Hey, look, we're going to do good because the Quran and the Bible say good." And work for restorative justice, not punitive justice. When you young people, really be an activist for restorative justice, saying, "Okay, bad things have happened here. We can punish everybody that did bad, but they're just going to resent us even more." We learned that after the First World War. We punished Germany, but it gave birth to Hitler. We really punished him in a way. And then after World War II, we rebuilt Germany and Japan, and now they're friends. You see the difference? That's restorative. And I say work for restorative justice. And one of the big things I think young people need to do now is be reading Mandela. They need to be reading Gandhi. They need to be reading Martin Luther King. He's, amazing. And there's also other heroes, like I said, Rehan. But they need to they need to be enlightening their minds right now. And then practicing those 4 steps: become friends, eat together, explore faith together, and do a project. And young people are very creative. Young people get this stuff quicker. A lot of us have to go through major paradigm shifts. Once young people hear this, they're like, okay, I'm going to go do it. And I've seen that. I've seen that. I had a young man, I'll tell you this real quickly. And I was teaching in Sydney a few years ago. And it was a predominantly Christian audience at that time. And they just wonderful people, but they really weren't feeling comfortable about this connection. You know what I'm saying? They were more into debating. And I said, and this young man came up and said, "Sir," he's about 19, 20. "I have a thing called Communities of Reconciliation. I have a template for it. I have written a book about it on my website. People can download it for free." And he says, "Can I get a copy of that?" I said, "Yeah, go download it on my website." 5 years later, I hear back from him. He goes, "I just want to thank you, sir. I took that, and I have groups all over my country that Muslims and Christians are eating together, following the 4 steps. And now I'm being invited by other Muslim countries to come and start these groups there." And so those simple things, keep the message simple: love God, love neighbor, treat other people the way you want to be treated. And if you find enemies, make them your friends. And one of the best ways to do that is become friends, keep working at it, eat together, explore faith together, and work for the common good. Do a service project.
I think that's really important. And these are actually, if we follow these steps, these are very important for our life. It's just, I can see the complete package. Thank you so much, sir, for your time for this session. It's really honor to have you. And there are many things that I learned today, and it's really amazing. At the end, anything you want to say,
Well,
any
thank you.
message? As we have a message from in all the previous talks, there was a message, but yet at the end, anything you want to say, any advice?
Yes, my advice is to dream big. Uh, I think the straight path, and the Christians call it the kingdom of God, is God's dream for the world. And in order to walk that path, we have to have that core message. I don't think you're on the straight path if you don't love God and love your neighbor and treat other people the way you want to be treated and make peace with your enemies. So that to me is the highest submission to God. Because in the Quran, it teaches that righteousness does not come from the direction of prayer. It doesn't say it's not important, but it deals with the heart. He said it comes from giving of your substance to your kinfolk, the poor, ransoming of slaves, all those things. So true righteousness comes by making the lives of other people better. That pleases God. And so my thing is, my message is simple now. And when I sit down with Muslims, I'll say, I think this is the straight path. According to the Quran, and say, I think this is in the Bible, and I've had no one push back. When they see it, they realize, yes, to love God is the most important thing. Love your neighbor, and to treat other people the way you want. If we do this, we are pleasing to God. So I encourage right now the young people, especially those of you now who are connecting with Rehan's movement, go for it. Go for it. You are stepping into God's dream for the world. You are, and you're at the very least, your life's going to be better by connecting with the world. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. That's really amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. At the end, we always say one thing: stay positive and be positive. Spread positivity. In this way, we can bring positivity around us. Take care of yourself and others. Goodbye. Allah Hafiz. Rabraka. Take care. Thank you, sir.
Masalama.